Okay, good morning. Welcome to ArcGIS for local public agencies. My name is Scott Jakovich. I'm going to do a brief introduction and we'll turn you over to our instructors. I'm with the California Local Technical Assistance Program at Cal State Long Beach. If you're not familiar with CALTAP, I encourage you to check out our website, subscribe to our e-blasts. We keep you up to date on the latest training that's available from both Caltrans and other local technical assistance partners. They come out about once a week or every 2 weeks. We've also got a suite of services that we offer to local public agencies. So I hope you'll stop by and take a look at what we can do, what kind of assistance we can provide for you. In today's class, we're looking to do a little bit of hands-on introduction to the ArcGIS Pro platform and the Berkeley's TIMS database, if you're unfamiliar with that. The goal is to kind of provide put together a concept where you can geomap data assets, particularly traffic incident data, which is important for putting together local road safety plans or road safety audits. During the class, we ask that you keep your mic and your webcam off, but definitely raise your hand if you have any questions. The instructors will contact you and allow you to, or ask you to unmute, and then you can go ahead and ask your question directly. And yeah, the intent is just to make this engaging as possible. So feel free to ask as many questions as you need, and get something out of this experience today. If you have any technical problems, what we're going to try to do is use a breakout room where we can put you into, separate you from the class. An instructor will drop in, and then the two of you can work on that technical issue kind of together while the class progresses. So let us know either through chat or by raising your hand if you've got a technical issue that you need help with. Our instructors today are Ben Olson, Center Operations Manager for the Cal State University Long Beach Center for International Trade and Transportation, and Dr. Steven Steinberg, Geographic Information Officer from the County of Los Angeles. Ben, why don't you take it over?
Thanks, Scott, and good morning, everybody. Let me go ahead and get my presentation up. Yeah, so we're here. We're glad to have you here today for ArcGIS for local public agencies. As Scott said, my name is Ben Olson. I am the Center Operations Manager at CATT at Cal State Long Beach. I graduated in 2018 with my Master's of Science in GIS. And I've been working at the university since then at the Center for International Trade and Transportation. I have some minimal direct local public agency experience in that I interned at the city of Irvine during my graduate degree. I worked in the GIS department there. And they have a dedicated small GIS department. And then I work on a variety of grant projects dealing with GIS. I do training programs like this and create GIS products for research purposes, many of which are funded by public agencies. So yeah, excited to have you here today. Like Scott said, feel free to raise your hand for questions at any point. We're going to start off with a little bit of lecture, and then there's going to be an activity in 3 parts that's going to have you guys hands-on doing GIS. So just to go over the course objectives here before I jump into the content, the main objective today is to have you guys build GIS capacity in ArcGIS Pro. So it's the main software that's provided by the Esri, the company with the largest market share of GIS software in the United States. In the context of that platform, we're going to have you guys start to understand GIS data types and GIS data management. The data set we're going to be having you guys work with specifically for the activities is going to be from Berkeley's Transportation Injury Mapping System, as Scott mentioned. So this is crash incident data that's provided by a research center at UC Berkeley. You may or may not have heard of it before, but that'll be part of the activity today. We're going to have you guys using basic geoprocessing tools such as the buffer tool. This is something you may or may not have heard of before. We'll be sure to explain geoprocessing as part of the class. We're going to have you guys understand the potential biases inherent in creating maps. So as a map author, there are some important things to understand and some intentional or unintentional biases that are critical to be considerate of when creating maps. And then we're going to have you guys create an interactive online web map as a final product. So the bulk of the activity and the focus of today will be in ArcGIS Pro, but we wanted to have one of the goals of today was to show you guys how to come up with a finished product that can be shareable online. And that's done through ArcGIS Online, which is a browser-based platform, and it syncs with ArcGIS Pro, and you can share your work between the two of them. You can kind of get set up with the full capabilities in ArcGIS Pro, and then you just have to publish to ArcGIS Online to kind of share your final product. So we'll wrap up that way and have you guys have like a clean final product by the end of the class. So I did want to start with a brief, like 5-10 minute review of some level 1 content. So this is a level 2 course. We did a level 1 a year ago in August 2023. That course is by no means a prerequisite for this course. You're not required to have taken that one at all to be in this level 2 course. But it was focused on some introductory GIS concepts that we're kind of assuming the participants here today have at least heard of. We're not expecting mastery of these concepts. But just to make sure that we're all on the same page and have at least heard of some GIS basics, I'm going to take a few minutes now to go over some of those concepts before we dive into the meat of the content for this course. So what does GIS really refer to? I'm sure we all know it stands for Geographic Information Systems. It has a whole host of use cases across a variety of topics and themes and business sectors. And so just kind of a couple high-level examples here. So things like this, where you can color code subregions of an area based on their responses to an election, for example, or something like that. There's data underlying the maps that are creating these, and this is an example of something that's been created using GIS. It's a static map showing the results of data. So navigation tools, this is maybe the most familiar hands-on GIS that the general population is familiar with. So you can think of things like Google Maps, Apple Maps as having been created using GIS, but then using them, you're also doing GIS as a user. So things like data dashboards. So when there's a geographic component to this, the live data that's being fed into to dashboards like this has to be configured using GIS. And the data displayed here can be updated by a live feed of data that has a refresh period, or can be manually updated by the authors of the dashboard. But in either case, this is something that's created using GIS. So just a couple high-level examples, because I think it can have kind of an amorphous definition, GIS, to kind of just make sure we're all on the same page and kind of conceptualizing the base concepts here. So a few more introductory concepts, so that we have this the concept of projection systems in GIS. So you can think about the need for projection systems coming from the fact that when you're creating a map, you're representing a 3D reality and a 2D visual. So the Earth is a sphere, right? It's 3D. And you can kind of think about projection systems with this orange peel analogy, where if you were to think about the Earth as an orange and you were to peel the surface of the Earth as if it were an orange and do it all in one piece, and then try to lay it flat, you wouldn't be able to do it without having gaps in between and tears. And but when you think about a map, they don't have those gaps and tears, so there's kind of some stretching and distortion that takes place to fill in those gaps. And there's no way to have the 2D representation of the 3D Earth without that. So some distortion is required, and projection systems are what we use to resolve that distortion. We'll go over some specifics more way later in the class, but just the idea of distortion being required and representing the Earth in a 2D way is what I want you to get from this slide. So the concept of data layers is an important one in GIS. It's very fundamental to the use of GIS. So you can think about a map as having a bunch of different features on it. If you think about a city map, it's got streets, it's got buildings, it's got parks, it's got lakes. And GIS considers each of the different features as a different layer, which is then its own data file. So this is helpful if you think about editing an existing map in a software. It's a lot more helpful to think about this if you want to change the way the street looks or analyze the street data. If you are worrying about all the buildings that are crowding around it or the parks that are up next to it, you're gonna have a lot harder time. But if you think about the street layer as something that's just standalone, you can pull it out and layer it on top of everything else, then you can manipulate that and work with each layer individually without worrying about the entire contents of the map at once. So that's the concept of data layers. So data layers have a visual component and then what's called an attribute table. So the attribute table just contains additional information that has more to do than just with the visual location of where things are. So if you think about the example of a street, a polyline data layer, the attribute table is just a spreadsheet that's associated with the location component that has additional information such as the street name, the street type, whether it's a road, an avenue, a boulevard, and any sort of other additional information. Maybe the last time it was paved, maybe the last time it was plowed. And attribute tables can contain just any sort of information that is supplementary to just the visual of where is the feature. So how is geospatial data created? So there's kind of three main ways you can think about it. The first is just GPS data collection using hardware. You can think about this as kind of like when you drop a pin in your phone or you send your friend your location, you're recording a GIS data point in that case. And if that's done, maybe it's done using a phone, there's higher accuracy location, kind of bigger hardware GPS devices that there's data collection efforts that use devices like that to go around and drop points at places where everywhere there's a fire hydrant or something like that. And then if you load what you've collected in your GPS data into a GIS software, you can configure an attribute table to go along with it, and then you have yourself a GIS data set. So that's kind of the most manual way of generating GIS data that you can think about. The second way is what's called digitization, which is basically just tracing imagery files. So if you have imagery from a drone or a satellite of a city or a region, you can take the image file that you have and put it in GIS software, and then it'll geolocate where you would trace along it. If you want to trace, here's a river, here's the street, you can drop a point where there's trees you're interested in. And then if you do that in the GIS software, it'll save the location of them. You can add attributes to the attribute table as you'd like, and that would generate a GIS data set. And that is what is called digitization. And then the third way is community surveying. So you can think about this as something like a survey that would go out, maybe you'd get to your email or to your phone, or you find it on social media. And it's it's a public agency or research organization looking to gather just some community feedback. And maybe there's 5 questions about something that's going on in the community. And one of the questions asks for a location. So maybe it's a GPS enabled location. Maybe it's the user inputting the name of the city they live in. In any case, the results of the survey can be compiled into a geospatial data set if there is that location survey question that the GIS software can pull from and map the location in the software, and then have the remaining survey questions that each respondent answered to serve as the attribute table contents for that data. So that's kind of like where GIS data originates. So that concludes our little crash course level 1 intro. So like I said, there's no need to have these concepts totally mastered, but you've perhaps heard of them before, and if not, now you have. So we're going to proceed knowing that you've at least heard the terms that I just went over. So if you're not the person going out collecting data or tracing aerial imagery or sending out surveys, where can you find and use GIS data? So a great resource is public agency websites. So there's a variety of federal and state websites that provide GIS data for their jurisdictions, and then larger counties and municipalities may as well, particularly in larger states with larger populations, such as California. So I linked a couple here. The state of California and Caltrans both have their own GIS data portal. The USGS has one that's at the federal level, and there is just a variety of other agencies that provide GIS data as well. There's also things like what's called the ArcGIS Living Atlas. So this is provided through Esri, and it's like a clearinghouse aggregator of what's publicly what's uploaded to Esri platforms that users make publicly available from all across the world. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit curated, but it's kind of just like you get whatever people have uploaded to the platform before. And there's just a whole variety of topics and different sorts of data available in Living Atlas from any sort of region you're looking at. And it's a little curated, but it can be a little like finding a needle in a haystack, but it's a huge volume of data that's available publicly. And then finally, there are research efforts that collect spatial data that make their data sets publicly available. So if there are research efforts that are doing the GPS locating, dropping points using GPS hardware, or if they're doing digitization, they might, as a part of their research efforts, depending on the stipulations with the research team and the funders, they could then make the results of what they found publicly available for other GIS users to use on their own. And so data from that sort of source is what we are going to be looking at today in the Berkeley TIMS. So the Transportation Injury Mapping System is a web portal developed by the Safe Transportation Research and Education Center at UC Berkeley. And so since 2003, it's been providing public access to California's crash data. So the data itself is from what's called SWITRS, the Statewide Integrated Traffic Record System, which is a database of collisions managed by the CHP. So the TIMS is the platform that you're using to access the SWITRS. So the SWITRS is the data itself, but the TIMS is what makes the SWITRS publicly available and kind of user-friendly to access. And the TIMS was set up by this research center at UC Berkeley. So it looks like this. It's a map navigator with that you've used before. We'll get in there and have you guys get into the platform and create an account to access this as a part of the activity 1 that we'll get into in just a second. So crash data from TIMS, SWITRS, and other sources is required as a part of road safety audits, which are included in local road safety plans, which are requirements for cities in many states. And so just that is to say that the TIMS data is it's in real use by real cities, by real people doing GIS. So it's a good real world example for you guys to be working with as a part of this class. And so you can kind of think of it as a data set that provides the location of crashes. It's in a general sense. And then the attribute table has a whole wealth of related information. There's a ton of additional fields in the attributes that include the address of the crash, the date and time of the crash, what side of the street it was on, the number of vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists involved, the number of people injured, the severity of the collision, and a whole variety of other attributes that you guys will be able to check out when you get into the platform in just a few minutes. Got a question from Jessa. Says Switters has been offline for a while. His data still being added in the background, though not publicly available using the Switters platform. So yeah, I did see that the Switters provided directly from the CHP has been offline. The Berkeley TIMS website says it's still being updated through 2024. It has provisional data from, I believe, 2022 to 2024. And so I think through March of this year. So it's as current as that, if that answers your question. So we're gonna go into the first activity now, but I just wanna leave a pause for any burning questions, because I just kind of went through a crash course of things. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand or pop into the chat. Otherwise, I will press on. Good to go. Thanks, Dale. Okay, I'm gonna switch over to the TIMS website now. I'm going to demo what you'll be doing in the first activity, and then there's a step-by-step instruction sheet available for you to then do it yourself in some work time that will follow the demo. So you can feel free to kind of try to follow along with me as I'm doing the demo, but I'll go, I'm gonna try to pace myself and go a little slowly, but I am gonna just kind of keep moving along and then save the work time, or then turn it over to you guys and save any questions for that time. So here, I gotta switch my screen share. Sorry, second. So this is the TIMS website. You will have to first create an account to access this. It's just a simple like email, password, and then like verify your email. And that is just kind of often the price you pay for freely available data. Is sometimes they want to get your email to track who's using their data. So that's kind of the small price you pay sometimes for using freely available data. But you'll get into the platform here. The web page is linked in the activity instructions. And there's a variety of things here, but you want to scroll down to access the Switters GIS map. I want to get started. And so this will pop up automatically, and it'll ask you to what parameters do you want for the crashes that you're looking to investigate. If this doesn't pop up automatically, it's this button here, Map Switters. So you can see it's blank by default. We have our lovely state of California here, but no crashes are shown. So if you hit Map Switters, you can specify a date and location. So you can see here 2020 or 2012 through 2024, Q1 of 2024 is available. But from 2022 on is provisional and subject to change. So you want to be careful of choosing a range that's too large, or that else you'll end up with too much data. I'm going to do a 1 month range in, let's go pre-pandemic. I'm gonna do a 2-week period in March 2019. Oops. So you specify your start and end date of what you're looking to pull there, and then by default they ask you to, or they'll direct you to look at a specific city or state route. You can also filter by tribal area, public schools, zip code, or you can upload a custom area. I, for the sake of this example, am gonna go look at Fresno. And then there's a variety of optional filters here. You'll be able to filter all this in ArcGIS Pro. So I would kind of encourage you to just go and get the whole and not filter and limit yourself here. And kind of just get all the crashes for the area that you're interested in. So it's, you specify a date range and then a region. I'm going with the city of Fresno. You choose the county and then the city. Show result. Take a second to load. So you'll see here, there's these blue dots that generated. Each of these is a crash incident. You can click on it to start to see some of the attribute table information. So you click on it and what comes up is what's called a pop-up. And that's connects to the attribute table associated with the data layer. And tells you the location, whether or not it was at an intersection, and a variety of related information. So you can kind of scroll around and check out the data that you generated. You can go back to the query and pull it for somewhere else if you didn't find what you were looking for. But then once you have a data set that you're interested in working with for the purposes of today, you're going to download it as a CSV file. So what you'll do is you go here to this tools option and you'll hit download crashes. And then the default values here are perfectly fine. You want the mapped crashes and you want the crashes rather than the parties or the victims. Just make sure the first option of each of these is selected. And then you'll hit download. And it'll download, I guess I'll just go ahead and do it. It'll download to your downloads folder, like everything else from your browser. And that's where we'll pause for the first part of the activity. And then in the next part, we'll go into ArcGIS Pro and get the data in there. So yeah, that concludes the demo for now. And so I'll turn it over to you guys to go into the instructions, make your account for the TIMS, and download data that you're interested in the Google Drive. And I'll pop the link for the Google Drive in the chat here in just a second. It was in the agenda that was sent out yesterday. But once you're in here, you'll see the activity instructions, the agenda, the PowerPoints from today. And then there's one folder that has just some backup crash data that is from a different 2-week period in March in Fresno. That's just in case you're having trouble making your account for the TIMS platform or getting into there and generating what you're looking for. There is that available as a backup, just in case. So I'm going to take this link and throw it in the chat. And you'll want to go to activity 1. This is step-by-step instructions for what I just showed you. Feel free to raise your hand or turn on your mic or throw a question in the chat if you want me to show you something that you missed, or if you have any specific questions, if you're coming across any issues. And so we'll give you some work time now to do that. I see, Nicole, you have a question for a citywide collision analysis. How many years of data do you recommend to be included? Past 5 years? Would you exclude pandemic years? So I'd say it kind of depends on what you're looking to get out of your analysis. And then in terms of the volume of data, it kind of depends on the region you're looking at. The past 5 years of collision data in a highly populated region might be a huge data set that would maybe slow down the software you're working with and kind of give you a lot to dig through. In a less populated region, that might be a more reasonable date range. I would kind of in general, I think I'd recommend a shorter one, maybe a year or 2 years as a range. And then would I exclude pandemic years? That again, I think that kind of depends on what you're looking to do with your analysis. If you're looking for kind of typical trends, I would exclude the pandemic years. But if you're looking to kind of factor in changes that took place because of, everything that was going on with the pandemic, I would go ahead and include it. So I think that's just kind of up to user discretion and what you're looking to learn. Uh, Ximena says, why do they call 2022 to 2024 provisional? We still use it. Yeah, you can definitely still use it. It's just still subject to change, I think, because they're doing like quality checks with other sources. And so they might change it and update it to reflect data of higher accuracy. And so they just wanted to call it provisional so you know that it's subject to change, but it is still available for your use. Ximena, so would it be acceptable to use it in a grant application or any other type of analysis? I think it would be acceptable to use provisionally. I think you'd have to provide the same qualification that it is provisional data. You always want to, tell the source of the data that you're using from, so you could say it's from the TIMS and it's stated that it was provisional and is subject to change. So you could go ahead and use it with that qualifier if you're looking for a super robust analysis in a grant application that has top tier quality data, I would not use the provisional data. And I mean, it just depends on if providing the qualifier for the data that you're using is harming what you're looking to apply for or not. It's kind of a trade-off. It's like you get the more recent data, but it's not as high accuracy. So I just was checking the agenda for the timing of things because I gave myself an hour for my first lecture, which was entirely too long. And then I gave you guys 45 minutes to work on this. Which I'm expecting might be a little long as well. So I'm gonna give you guys until 9:20 right now. And then check in to see who's still working. Is this recording going to be sent afterwards? Asked Valerie. I'm gonna defer that question to Scott.
Valerie, once we've got it trimmed up and ready to go, we can certainly share a copy with you.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, awesome, Valerie. Glad to hear. Nicole, question, not 100% crashes are mapped. Is there a way to download full data? I actually was just noticing that for the first time as well, that not 100% of the crashes were mapped in this case. And I'm honestly not sure why that's the case. Because if I just think out loud for a minute, I would perhaps say it have to do with the fact that it's provisional data that's being provided, but it's the same case for what I generated here, and this is 2019, which is before then. So that, I mean, that might just speak to the quality of the data and the fact that it is, provided free by a research effort. And so there are some inherent limitations just with the fact that it's not, there has to be a continuous stream of funding to get to maintain the platform. And that's something that perhaps fluctuates. So that's, so yeah, I'm not exactly sure why that's the case, but I think it is something to note that speaks to the completeness of the data that you're working with. Yeah, so what Steve just shared in the chat is definitely true. So this is example data. that has, local public agency implications, the TIMS data. So that's why we're having you guys use this as the example for the activity. But what we're going to be doing with the workflow in terms of getting the data into ArcGIS Pro and publishing in the web app, in ArcGIS Online, is something you can do with any data set. So if you're having trouble with the TIMS platform generating what you're most interested in looking at, I'd say just pull data that you're maybe less interested in, but then you can follow the workflow and be able to use that to apply to data that you're have at your workplace. So we'll do 5 more minutes until we check in and then move on. We'll do one more minute. Okay. All right, so gathering everybody back here together. Want to have just a little bit of discussion. And we kind of got into this a little bit with the people or the questions that people were asking during our work time. But this discussion question following activity 1 is, were you able to access the data for the time frame and location that you wanted? And if not, were you able to determine why not? So the idea here is to kind of demonstrate that freely available data often has limitations, as I said before. So feel free to raise your hand or answer in the chat. Samantha was able to get what she was looking for. It's good to hear. Jessa as well, nice. Okay, everybody's that answering was able to get what they were looking for. Okay, great. So yeah, the idea here was to demonstrate that there's some limitations. It seems like y'all we're not too limited, which is great. But we got at it a little bit in seeing that there's the most recent data is provisional. It's not the quality checks are still undergoing way. And then there is some incomplete data that's rendered looking at certain regions, which is uh, uh, a limitation, because that's something you want to be clear about when using this data in other sources. If you're going to download it and use it elsewhere, you want to be clear that it is perhaps not fully complete in terms of all the crashes represented or the time frame that you're looking at. And so just transparency is the best route forward when there are things like that with the data that you're working with. But yeah, definitely really excited to hear that everybody that's responding got access to the data for the region they were looking for. So now I'm going to turn it over to Steve. He's going to go through his presentation talking about the use of GIS in local public agencies.
All right, so thank you, Ben, and I'm glad folks are able to find some data. And just as I said in the chat, this is sample data. Your local agencies and organizations probably have similar data in traffic accidents and otherwise. What I'm going to do is do a bit of an introduction to a more high-level view of what's possible in GIS in government. Let me get my screen share going here, and then we'll start. Okay, so hopefully my screen share is functioning. Zoom likes to hide things on me. So just by way of a brief introduction, I'm Steve Steinberg. My day job is as the Geospatial Information Officer for the County of Los Angeles. I know some of you are in and around the county and others are from all over the state. So welcome to everybody. Coming to you from lovely downtown Burbank, and that's a reference to Johnny Carson for those of you old enough to remember him. So my role at the county is GIO, but as Ben had on his intro slide for me, I also teach in the Geospatial Science Master's Program at Cal State Long Beach in the evenings. That's the program Ben graduated from a number of years ago before I was there. But it's a great program, and I'm going to put a little public announcement out there and say we run one-year cohorts in this master's program starting each fall. They run fall, spring, summer, and one of the things we do in the program is projects for external clients. Teams of grad students will take on a project to help a client develop a tool and analysis, things like that, in using geospatial tools and technology. So as an aside, if you have a need where you think there may be an opportunity for a group of grad students to work with you, we're going to kick off our new cohort next week and be looking for new project partners. So feel free to reach out to me after this, and I'd be happy to give you more information. Okay, so just a little bit of perspective on LA County to set the stage on how we use GIS for those who aren't as familiar. We're big population-wise. We're the largest county in the country. And if we were a state on our own, LA County would be one of the top 10 largest population states in the US. About 4,000 square miles of land area, and about 65% of that is unincorporated. And I'm sure many of you know, as county government, our primary responsibility is the unincorporated portions of the county. We have 88 incorporated cities. On the map on the screen, you can see the white areas. Those are the incorporated cities. All the shaded areas are unincorporated county jurisdictions. So lots of roads and other things going out there in the transportation side, and everything else the county does in the unincorporated. We also do provide contract services, primarily sheriff and fire, to more than 50 of our cities out of the 88. We also obviously do countywide public health and elections and a whole bunch of other things. So lots of stuff going on in county government, as you would expect. Like any large bureaucracy, we have lots of departments and other entities. So about 40 departments, lots of other jurisdictional entities, lots of areas we manage, parks and other natural areas, about 63,000 acres, about 10,000 miles of maintained roads. And we have a lot of employees that I interact with, not all of them, but a good number of them. So in LA County, we run our GIS operations as what's called an enterprise GIS system. What that means is we have a centralized GIS team, our enterprise GIS team, that supports all of our departments across the county. And what that also does, much like Tim's does in a different way, we organize and manage all of the data, GIS data and imagery for all of our county departments to leverage. So we have a single sort of authoritative source of data and information that everyone can leverage. So like Tim's is an authoritative source for traffic data or traffic collision data. We manage something on the order of about 800 data layers for LA County across every possible theme that you can imagine, from infrastructure to service areas to whatever it may be, across all of our departments. We also share our infrastructure and tools. And a lot of what we've done with our enterprise GIS program, and I'll allude to this a little more later, is brought what would have traditionally been field-based operations into the office, so that a lot of things that maybe you would have traditionally gotten out in the field to look at or assess or update information on, we can manage to some degree through the desktop. And certainly, for better or worse, COVID forced our hand on that a little bit, to have to do remote work and things like that. It made it a better opportunity for us to develop that. And there's optimization. And I'll give you a whole bunch of examples here. And since Ben gave me an extra chunk of time, and I'm a faculty person in my spare time, I guess you get an hour lecture out of me now. Maybe not. Just structurally, in case, just for context, we've done GIS in LA County for far longer than I've been here. We're the 20th customer of Esri, the software company that makes ArcPro and the other tools we will be looking at. So we've had a long time to evolve our GIS in LA County. Some other cities and counties are much newer to this game, so there's a lot of evolution represented here. As I said, we have a hub and spoke configuration with our enterprise GIS team managing all the authoritative data and infrastructure. But we have GIS staff across 14 different departments in the county. So that's the spokes of the wheel that go out to specialists in certain departments where they do a lot of GIS, particularly public works. With a lot of our infrastructure has a large GIS team in our assessor's office and many other departments. So that lets us sort of optimize. We have about 150 plus GIS positions in the county across 9 job specifications. And another little public announcement, as of today, our GIS manager 1 position was just posted for an exam. So if you know anyone who's looking to move up in their GIS career, please let them know. My role as a GIO, and you may or may not have a GIO in your organization, is to serve as an advocate and sort of visionary for GIS in the county. So setting the stage across the county, how we work with these tools to optimize and extend our capabilities. And again, I'll give you some examples of that, what we do, where we're looking to innovate, and then also to help coordinate across those many departments and agency goals to serve our community, our stakeholders, our departments more effectively. So we have a steering committee with the GIS managers that meets regularly. We have our GIS team, and then we set a number of standards and practices and SOPs to keep everything moving forward in an efficient manner. So it may be a bit of a rhetorical question, but why do we care about maps? Why do people in government use maps? I think, there's a whole bunch of reasons, providing services, understanding where our infrastructure is, what the condition is, what the accessibility to different stakeholder groups are. As somebody asked about grants in the question, yes, GIS data and analysis can certainly help us get funding and grants and other things of that nature. We involve lots of public participation through voting, census, so on. But probably the biggest thing in a lot of local government is this is how we make our money. We keep track of our parcels, we do tax assessments, we know where our money is coming from. But there's a lot of different areas that this certainly comes into play. You can see a few example maps here for different, sort of visuals of some of those things, but I'll talk more specifically in a few minutes. Okay, whoops. Why am I not advancing? There we go. Okay. One of the things I always tell anyone who will listen in our county government agency or others in government is essentially everything we do in government is based on location. We map or could map almost all of the data sets we work with. So we've got sources coming, as Ben talked about earlier, from various agency databases. More and more we're using imagery, and I'll talk to that in a bit. Some of the data are collected with mapping in mind, but I would venture to guess most of your agencies have a large amount of data that was not maybe ever mapped, but could be. And maybe would benefit from that. So when you think about any data set that may be in an Excel sheets or in other documents or databases, if there's any location information, that could be a parcel number, an address, a service area, a census unit, or whatever it may be, those all are locations that can be brought into our ArcGIS platform and used to do assessments and analysis and make these kinds of web applications we're talking about. So a few examples just to give you a sense of this. One of our big ones in all local government agencies at the county level is addressing. Street center lines, every address in the jurisdiction. For LA County, we call this our CAMS system, our countywide address management system. And this is coordinated through our enterprise team along with data coming in from all of our cities and our public works department, who are the authoritative source for new addresses or updates to addresses. I mean, our CAMP system provides, much like you saw in Tim's, accessible data sets for street center lines and addresses that are used in a variety of applications. Notably, of course, 911 response, other county services, tax assessment information, utility services. You can go down the list. And this isn't just for the county, but these data are provided publicly to other organizations who want to use them, be those our 88 cities or other external partners or emergency services and so on. A few other examples. I'm just going to go through sort of a shopping list here. We have wildfires in California. One of the things we've moved towards doing much more effectively with GIS is looking at our evacuation and repopulation zones around any kind of an emergency event. So this is just an example. And I know that statewide, our state GIO, Lothar, has been working with the counties on this issue of determining evacuation areas that make sense based on access, transportation, population, and so on, so that as events are happening, we're not trying to do this in the middle of the emergency. We already kind of have these areas defined. In this example here, you can see the different colored polygons in green, yellow. There's none red here right now, but we can overlay, in this case, a fire perimeter and see which areas may be impacted and need to be evacuated, or when they're ready to repopulate. We can update these maps very easily and make them available to the media and the public so people know my neighborhood is in an evacuation and now we're allowed to go back, or we need to be preparing to evacuate. So this has been really useful. And on this example, you can also see we've got road closure information. So these come from our public works folks to show in real time what roads are open or closed, where evacuation centers are, or some of the other symbols, and so on. So lots of ways we can leverage having good data in advance for these kinds of operations. COVID, of course, was a huge issue. We built lots of different applications and dashboards for different things, testing sites, looking at the number of infections, looking at where people could find other resources during COVID, be that going out into natural areas. On the left there, you can see which beaches and parks and trails were open or closed during COVID at different points. We had public dashboards for that, cooling centers, support services, and so on. So lots of different dashboards that we spin up. And again, these are sort of the difference between what do you do internally for analysis versus what do you maybe make public facing to serve your communities and stakeholders. Few more examples: food resources and other emergency proclamations as different cities were opening or closing due to COVID. Lots there. We've been doing a lot of work, as everyone has, on the digital divide. So here's an example of one of our early maps from looking at where the need was. So the darker the colors here, the greater the proportion of the population that lacked internet access. And this has helped us look at our infrastructure to get internet access and training and funding and all the other things into the communities most in need, working with federal, state, and local partners. Looking at demographic data in almost any context, be that services, traffic flows, emergencies, demographic data like this at the census block level can be very useful. And Ben alluded to the Living Atlas at the beginning of his talk. That is a source where a lot of this kind of demographic census level data is freely available. So you may not have it locally in your own agency, but with ArcGIS Pro, you can access all kinds of these, demographic data on income, education, digital access, and hundreds of other parameters through the Living Atlas. And that's freely available to anyone with the software. We, again, during COVID, it was the instigator built out a public Wi-Fi locator. So when folks were not able to go to school or work and they didn't have internet at home, where could they go get access to the internet? So we developed in-house a Wi-Fi locator that would let people look up in the upper right here. It's a little small. They could put in the address where they're located and a search radius, and then it would find all the Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi within that radius around their house, and then list out the addresses and information about where those were. It's still available, but less maybe essential than it was during COVID. Now, one of the things when we get into ArcPro and start working with data is, of course, the analytical capabilities. And I'll show you just a few examples here. When we were looking at public access to Wi-Fi in this use case, but it could be any service you're interested in, we wanted to know, based on public transportation, which is the blobs, the amoeba-shaped blobs, those are around metro stations or metro stops for trains and buses. How far can somebody get within a 15-minute walk of those stations or those Wi-Fi access points? And do they cover neighborhoods or communities in need? Or, you know, if somebody was going there, would it get them there? Actually, this one is the Wi-Fi hotspots. This one is the metro stations. So all the gray blobs here are stops along the metro lines and a 15-minute walk. And then the blue areas are hotspots that we had identified. And then looking for those overlaps. So this area here, lots of overlap between hot Wi-Fi access, public access, and metro stops. But then you look at areas over here and there's not a lot going on. So that helps us to plan and optimize for where we want to look to add service or capabilities for people. And again, lots of these things translate into other use cases. So you might look at any variety of examples of how far a walk time, or in the case of transportation, you can do the same thing for drive times. And Esri's ArcGIS tools actually provide lots of analytics based on historic traffic data and other information on routes to give these kinds of distance polygons or these blobs of how far can you get from a point in a given travel time based on the mode of transportation, the time of day, you know, and a number of other variables. Equity is a big issue, again, across the country, across the state. We were directed by our board of supervisors to do quite a lot of work on equity issues. So we built out something called our Equity Explorer. This was built actually it's publicly available, but it was built for internal use by our county departments to look at when they were investing project resources or grant funding to a program in a particular region of the county, were they actually hitting their target population? Are they hitting the people intended in that grant or in that funding or that program? So for internal purposes, this tool is used for people in a department to say, we're going to do a program in a particular area, and it'll aggregate out, as you can see at the bottom here, which census tracts are in the area of interest, or, you know, how many people, what's their equity scores, are they hitting the right population? And if a program was proposed that does not hit the target population of at a high enough level, then the department might be asked to reconfigure their program plan to address that issue. And this is a very complex dashboard that does a lot of interesting stuff, but it's really driving how we do funding in a lot of our programs. We can look at different variables in here. So this one's households without vehicles. So, you know, if we're not going to have individual transportation, now we have to think about other options. Are we getting to the people in their neighborhood? Are we along metro public transportation lines, or do we have to provide some other means of getting those services to people? And then, of course, these tools, and we'll do a little bit of public-facing dashboard or applications later. You can build in things like graphs and charts and all kinds of other indices. So lots of stuff in equity going on, just as another example of how you might mesh demographic data with other programs and needs. You know, might be looking at accidents, as we were looking at with the TIMS data. Are we seeing higher prevalence of accidents in particular types of communities because of, you know, the way the streets are configured, or the sidewalks or the bike paths or the crosswalks? And then on the other side of this, we actually have another dashboard that's looking at how we allocated our ARPA funding that came out of the, American Rescue Plan, to make sure we're, again, being equitable in providing programs and resources across the region that align to the target communities. So this is, a transparency issue for the county to show all the projects that were funded and where and who they're impacting. And you can see on the left, there's a whole bunch of drop downs and expandable lists where you can turn on different types of programs and they'll light up on the map. And you can see how they align to the equity index. That's the colors on the map. And there's a whole bunch of other things I could go on and on and on, but I won't try to go too long. But there are a lot of other uses, and Ben already addressed a little bit of this, but where do our data come from? So I want to talk a little bit to some of the data source issues. So obviously, like anything with analysis on a computer, if we have good data, we get good results. If we have lousy data or incomplete data, we may not get such good results. So our goal is always to get the best possible defensible authoritative data when we do any of these kinds of applications and analysis. So as Ben already alluded to, some data we actually collect ourselves as local governments or as government agencies. We may do that with mobile applications in the field. We may do that through our existing workflows and systems, many of them that are listed there that already have some kind of spatial data. They're tied to an address or a property. They're tied to a parcel. They're tied to a service area. They're tied to our infrastructure, our street center lines, or our drainage, stormwater systems, whatever it may be. Many of these are done out in the field. So you may have your survey crews out collecting and mapping data through your different departments. There's lots of direct collected data, and certainly that's never going to go away, but it's time consuming and expensive every time you have to send people into the field to do a lot of this kind of work. So there's a few emerging areas. And Ben alluded to this idea of capturing data from imagery and digitization of data from imagery. So everybody loves their drones. Small, uncrewed aerial systems is the technical term for these small ones that maybe you've seen around your own agencies or maybe own yourself. These are the under 20 or 30 pounds. I think 30 pounds is the limit for what's considered a small UAS. When you get into the larger, heavier ones, the licensing requirements change, but you do need to get a FAA license to do work with these things if you're doing it as an official workflow as a government agency. Hobbyists can fly them for free, but as soon as you're doing real work for pay or for an agency, you do need a FAA license to fly and collect data with drones. And we have a number of our departments in the county using drones, and I'll show you a few examples. One of them that certainly jumped out very early with our county fire was going out and doing after event assessments, damage assessments. So here's just a small example from a fire a few years ago, the Woolsey fire, which is up in the northwestern part of the county around Malibu and areas around. And you can see here about a half hour with the drone flying, 200 images, and we can get a 3D model that's accurately geolocated, and you can actually see structures and topography and burn area. You can see up on the mountain here where vegetation's burned, and you may end up having landslide risks from the burned areas. You can see where the vegetation's intact. And if I were able to zoom in on this screenshot, you'd be able to see which houses or structures were damaged or destroyed. That's a pretty quick data collection that can be used in analysis that would be difficult to do on the ground, certainly difficult to do as quickly. You have the drive time out and back's the same. It's really the time in the field once you're on site, about a half hour to collect the data, an hour or two back in the office to prep the data into the 3D geospatial model that you can then use in software to make measurements and do analysis. For site inspections, another place, this is more our regional planning department for enforcement. This is a good example where they went out and flew a junkyard essentially. And you can see, on the left, the 3D point cloud, which is derived from the imagery. You can see it's a little wonky, but you can see trucks and cranes and structures pretty well. And then you can see the aerial imagery on the right here. And what was interesting when they first did this assessment, on top of the roof, they saw a bunch of stuff, which you could not see from the ground. So this was a benefit of flying the UAS. Those were a bunch of gas tanks that had been thrown up on the roof, and because they're gas tanks and they may have gas in them still, that's a violation that the the enforcement folks, would not have even known about if they just did a ground-based assessment of the site and walked around. They would have never seen them. It's probably why they were throwing them up there in the first place. So drone really changed the game to understand that. And we're looking at other things. You can do inspections, rooftop and inspections, or tower inspections, or bridge inspections, lots of things like that as well. We've done a little bit of experimentation, actually with my grad students. This came out of looking for at-risk populations in like flood zones or fire zones. So this is actually using drone imagery to extract encampment information. So finding tents or tarps or other structures from the imagery. You can see the raw imagery here. You can see some of the processing steps, but these circled areas are what are identified as tarps or tents from the imagery. Again, you could fly a large area fairly quickly along a flood zone, a river, or in forested areas that may be in high fire risk zones to sort of get a sense of, do we have people we need to evacuate or help that we don't even know are there? They're not, a listed address that's in an evacuation zone. They're camped out. So that's another place you can sort of use drones. And this is an automated assessment. So we can actually extract the data on potential, encampments or tents and tarps without having a human in the loop to necessarily do that. It gives us a quick, are there things there we need to be concerned about? For those who happen to be in LA County on the call, you may be familiar with LARIAC, but governments have used imagery, aerial photography for decades, many decades, in a whole bunch of ways. So LARIAC is our regional consortium in LA County for collecting imagery. We fly every year at high resolution, and you can see a couple of examples on the screen. So on the right is an oblique image, so it's a 45-degree angle looking at downtown LA, and you can see here overlaying a GIS parcel with all the measurements along it, and we can actually make imagery and GIS data sets work together. So that could be any GIS data that you want to overlay and do measurements and queries on. So we can measure to pretty much engineering grade accuracy within 6 inches of real world position and accuracy, any length, area, height, slope, all these different tools here are different measurement tools we can use with our vendor that we collect the LARIAC imagery for, and we can look at change over time and so on. So lots of ways, again, to replace maybe going out in the field for a preliminary assessment. We can make the same measurements and assessments on our desktop and avoid going out to the field, at least for initial things. You're not going to build a bridge based on this. You're going to want a field survey, but you can certainly get a sense of what's going on, what you may need to take to the field, or where your options are before that. On the left, just to highlight this one, we actually collect what's called near infrared. This is not thermal data. It's just before the thermal part of the spectrum as part of our imagery collection. So it's the same imagery, it's just colorized in a different way on the screen. And what's interesting here is you can see this one home sort of in the center where the grass is green, and all the other ones, the grass is red. And in this kind of imagery, it's a false color image. Vegetation that's actively growing and healthy shows up as red. If it was dead or dying, or more natural, like in the trees up here on the upper left, it might be a little grayer. But green grass in this image is not grass, it's astroturf or artificial grass. So if you're looking at vegetation condition or irrigation or stormwater or over irrigation runoff, this tells us these folks aren't watering, and all these people with bright red lawns are watering. So we can, a lot of things across the state in the water side are using this kind of imagery to get a sense of irrigated lands, stormwater runoff, things like that. And obviously from a fire and risk assessment, we can get a sense of where we have dead and dying vegetation and fuels and things like that. So lots of uses of imagery. Our LARIAC program has been going for a long time, almost 20 years. And I'm just going to put in a little side pitch here. If you are in LA County and your city or agency is a member of LARIAC, you're already bought in, and you may have access to these data for LA County. And what we're doing is bringing everyone together. Many counties across the state do something similar. They collectively obtain these kinds of data and derive data sets and then share them across a consortium. Many of the counties in the state do this. So you should check if you're not aware of being part of something like this. And if you are not, you can certainly look into joining. So if you're in LA County and you don't know, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you or your agency more about that. And if you are a member already and don't know, then we can talk to you about how you might get access. Lots of benefits. And you can see on the right here, there's lots of other derived data products. It's not just the picture, it's we get building footprints, we get topography at 2-foot contours, we get 3D imagery, 3D data, we get building heights, we get change analysis. So there's a lot of other products that come out of these. Some are done manually, as Ben alluded to. You could look at the picture and just draw around something or measure something. Some are automated, and we can actually derive across the whole data set features of interest. So a couple examples here. On the left, we have building footprints. There's Dodger Stadium as an example. And you can see on the legend here, if it hasn't changed since our last flight, it's yellow. If it's new, like this structure over here, maybe a new snack bar or something, or bathroom, that's in green. If it was there but changed, it'll show in orange. And if it's replaced, or something that was there, went away and came back, we have that too. So we can get a sense of change. Our assessor's office loves this, but it's also good after fires or landslides to sort of understand what's going on. On the right, we have an example of a land cover map. So this tells us into different categories, which is very useful for vegetation analysis, stormwater runoff, impermeable surfaces, things like that. And this is all pulled automatically from imagery. We don't have people tracing these things. It's done with, well, today we'd call it AI, or machine learning would be the old term for this. And just to give you a quick example of change assessment. So here's just going through different years, that area of downtown LA. If you know LA, this is the Grand Park, or where the County Hall of Administration is, and some of the theaters over here and the fountain. So going through sort of a time series of different imagery, you can see the parks there in the middle, and then the parks getting all ripped up because they were redoing things. And you can see the park coming back, and sort of, if you look in other outlying areas of this, you can see changes to the buildings downtown and things like that. So all these images are actually located very accurately. We know where each point is. We can get an XYZ coordinate. So it's not just a pretty picture, but it's actually GIS data, or data we can use for analysis. You can see kind of just to the upper left, a building that gets torn down and rebuilt in a new thing. Again, for imagery and fires, here's an example of a pre-fire image of one of our parks and rec sites. You can see there's some buildings there, parking lot, and then there's a trailhead here that people go off. And then after the fire, we can see this building was destroyed. We can see this building survived. We can see the red trees are alive and doing okay in this false color imagery. All the trees over here near the burned buildings are now not red. They're not doing so well. So you can kind of see them in the natural color image, but the infrared really gives us a lot more detail on those kinds of things. And then here's just a zoom in to sort of give you a sense of that. You can really see the destroyed building and the not. And these are images that are collected through a data program that is through one of the vendors for the insurance industry. They make the data freely available to governments. So this data was collected within days of the fire going through. So you don't have to wait too long to get this kind of data if you're set up right. So just a few things about looking to the future and things you might be thinking about. We can get a lot of different kinds of data now than even a few years ago. As I said, machine learning and AI lets us automate a lot of the processes that we maybe would have done in the field or manually from tracing things off of our computer screen in ArcGIS, and we can push into some different application areas. So big one that might be of interest to this group, street level imagery. And I'm sure some of you have already seen data like this. Certainly, Google Maps has something like this that is street level imagery. The commercial vendor type data that you can get in this realm is much more detailed, much higher resolution, and again, is actually usable within your ArcGIS platform with true real world XYZ and coordinates and measurement tools and things like that. So here's just a screenshot of one of these kinds of data sets. You can see the green dots going down the road. That's everywhere an image center is taken. In the case of this data set, it was, I believe, every 6 feet along the road, and we get a 360 degree view plus a 180 hemisphere all the way up, above the vehicle as it goes, and also collect LiDAR data. So that's laser rangefinder like you'd use on a total station survey unit or aerial LiDAR survey. So we get a full 3D reconstruction model that's measurable out of these data too. So from these kinds of data, and again, you may in some cases be using this already, automated feature extraction is one of the optional things you can hire these vendors to provide you. So we're not just getting the picture, but we can actually extract from that. Give me all the assets, give me the stoplights, give me the crosswalks, give me the curbs, give me the manhole covers, give me the ADA ramps. And what we're actually looking to do with this in the next year is look at our ADA compliance by capturing from these images the actual measurements of this ADA ramp to see if it's compliant or not. Look at the slope, look at the depth, look at the the curb, the width, all those measurements that are required. Instead of having to send survey crews out to look at each one of these in the field, we're anticipating that we should be able to get a large majority of these assessed from the desktop through automated methods, or maybe hybrid automated and desktop assessment, and only have to send crews out to look at the subset that are in the gray area that we're not as sure about. But if they're clearly in compliance or clearly out of compliance, we can make decisions from the desktop that say, here's things we need to go work on, here's things that are okay, and then maybe here's ones we have to go look at more in the field. You could do a lot of other things as they're listed on the side there. And then more on machine learning and automation that's sort of coming soon to a desktop near you. There's a lot going on in this realm, looking at, as you can see in the center image, you can see vegetation and vegetation types, but if you look closely, you can probably also see the towers and the power lines are there. We could see the curbs, we could see the structures. This is coming from imagery and LiDAR data. We're actually in the middle in our LARIAC program of doing some of this kind of assessment, and we're going to be very excited to be getting things like power poles and vegetation heights and additional information that we would normally have to have gone out in the field or done from image interpretation on our screens. So there's a lot of new technology and capability coming into this realm of automating these processes so they're faster and more accurate. So just to sort of wrap up this section, so I don't go too long, we'll give you some time more for questions, and then getting into our next exercise. There's lots of stuff coming in this realm where we can do, machine learning, AI to get more out of our imagery, whether that's aerial imagery or ground-based imagery, and automate a lot of those so they become actual GIS data that we can do analysis and visualization and build applications for the public with. And I think for many of us, as I said, COVID really told us this idea of working remotely is something that we can do. I think in our realm of geospatial, and as I said, with not sending people out in the field as much to do field assessments on everything, we can capture a lot of these data from imagery using these tools and do it from our desktops. And certainly in a place like LA County where traffic is so horrible, if I don't have to send a field crew out, that's a huge time savings. We can get a lot more quickly, look at those changes in analysis and move our and be more efficient with our government services. So to bring it to the sort of wrap up, I'd say, and again, not a surprise, I love technology. I've been in this business for 30 years or so, but it's really about what is the question or the workflow we can benefit with these tools if we don't have to, do it the manual method or the going out in the field method. Can we support the decision making, the allocation of resources, and so on across our areas of interest? So saving field work, making data-driven decisions that are based on real, measurable, trackable data, and doing that more quickly and without as much inconsistency or human error. I won't claim that all this imagery-based analysis that leads to GIS analysis is perfect. It's by no stretch perfect, but the errors we get in image analysis are consistent. Human error, two different people looking at something and making an assessment may get two different answers. We can work to improve our automation to get better accuracy and consistency in ways that are difficult to do with just sending people out in the field or making manual assessments. And I think the other benefit, of course, is pictures are worth 1,000 words. Maps are great communication tools. If I hand you a spreadsheet, it's hard to understand what's going on and what your actions or optimizations may be. But if I give you a visual map of the same data, you can suddenly see where you have opportunities or needs or other things going on in the data that may tell you we should do something here, not there. Ben alluded to this, but just to, again, if you probably have a lot of data in your own agencies and organizations, there are lots of these data portals out there that have additional data. For LA County, as I said, we have hundreds of data sets. We have a couple of different data portals that expose our data publicly, so people can get there and use it. Esri has the Living Atlas. The state of California has state level data portals. Most counties in the state, the larger ones, have similar to this, and a lot of cities now have their own data portals. So there's a lot of data out there you don't have to create or capture yourself. It's just there waiting to be used. And most of these, not all, will work directly in your ArcGIS software. You don't have to do a whole lot. You just grab the data or even point to the data directly, and it pulls it from the server for you right into your ArcGIS Pro desktop. And our goal, of course, is turning what was spreadsheets or databases that were not visual into interactive mapping tools or story maps or dashboards of various types, so that they're useful to your own agency and your own analysis or for the public. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm still way ahead of schedule. I'm happy to take any questions generally if you have questions for me. Or otherwise, I'll turn it back to Ben. And I will say the PDF version of these slides is in that Google Drive. So all the links and everything else that I raced through are here in the slides. You can go back and check that stuff out afterwards.
Awesome, that's great. Thanks, Steve. I want to be sure to give people a minute to ask any questions that may be ruminating in their head. And then we're going to go into our one brief break before we press on. I'll give everybody a...
Sorry, Ben. Lauren, you had your hand up during Steve's presentation. Did you still have a question?
Oh, you could invent a question.
Oh,
That's all right.
and I think Justin had a question. Justin, you want to come on? Because you're referring to a specific slide as to whether it was Street Smart, which we don't know which one that is now.
So we do not use Street Smart as the particular product or vendor, but there are a lot of vendors that do similar things. And actually, even ArcGIS Pro now has a number of tools we've done a little exploration with already for doing this kind of feature extraction or mapping from imagery or linking in those kinds of imagery. So there's a whole bunch of tools. I'm not going to necessarily recommend one vendor over another, but yeah, there's similar tools from many. And yeah, on the ADA ramp, the imagery that I had on the screen was just a high resolution camera system from that 360 camera that's rooftop mounted on the vendor's vehicle. But they also, at the same time, capture LiDAR to go with the imagery. So you are getting a photo and a LiDAR simultaneously. So those measurements are coming from high accuracy LiDAR point clouds taken at the time. Thanks for that. And again, my email is in the slides. You're welcome to reach out if you have questions about anything later. I'm always happy to talk to folks. And again, if you're in LA County, all that LARIAC stuff I shared from our imagery program is potentially available to you if your organization's a member. And if you're not, we can talk to you about how to do that. And if your county or jurisdiction elsewhere in the state is not a member or is not collecting similar data, our LARIAC contract is available to other counties as a master agreement. They can emulate without having to go through the whole RFP process. I don't know the details, but I know that's in there, and many counties across the state have actually leveraged our LARIAC contracts vehicle to get similar data for their own counties. Okay, well, I'll be hanging out here through the day, so you're welcome to, if something else pops up, put a question in chat or reach out to me anytime.
Great, thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you.
So yeah, next I have the second half of my lecture, and then we'll go into the second and third part of the activity. But we are scheduled for our 15-minute break now, so I'm going to go ahead and give us the time for that. It's 10. We'll call it 10:10 now, and we'll expect everybody back at make it 10:25. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the second part of my lecture. Okay, so we're going to go over a few more level 2 concepts and then get into ArcGIS Pro in part 2 of the activity. So as you've been hearing, and as you may have dealt with in some capacity, there's a lot of data being dealt with in GIS. And GIS data is unique in that it has a spatial component. So you can think about earlier when we were talking about data layers, about how, a lot of people's visualization of a data set is an Excel spreadsheet, but GIS data is unique in that it has a spatial component associated with that Excel spreadsheet. So there must be a location reference beyond just the numerical or text info. And it comes in a variety of common file types. So you can think about a file type as .docx for Word, .jpeg for images. There's a couple common ones for GIS spatial data. Just checking in on the chat. Oh, Steve is sharing some additional resources. I saw there was a hand raised. Whose hand is that? Ben Pacho, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Or perhaps it was a mistake. Yeah, just let us know if you have a question, Ben. Okay, so as I was saying, there's some common file types when using GIS data. So kind of the two main ones you can think about are the shapefile and the geodatabase. So shapefile file extension is .shp, and it actually comes in a package of files that include other file types, such as the DBF includes the attribute information, the PRJ contains the projection information, but the main one in your package is your SHP for your shapefile. And this is kind of your legacy file type that's been around for a while in GIS. And then there's the geodatabase, which is .gdb, and this allows for more complexity and for more versatility in what you're able to do with the file. And it is kind of the newer file type. So, I mean, there is kind of a phasing that's happening from like shapefile to geodatabase and other file types, but shapefile, like I'm always still like excited to find a shapefile of what I'm looking for, because that is already a GIS data set at least, and it's not like I have just imagery that I have to digitize or give a spatial reference, much like what Steve was saying, or it's not just a spreadsheet where I have to make sure that it's populated with geographic information and then configure the spatial reference. It's the shapefile is at least already GIS data set, even if it is kind of the legacy file type. So what if you have a data set that doesn't have a spatial reference, like we've talked about a little bit? You may be thinking about how for the Tim's data set, we downloaded a spreadsheet. So that is a CSV, Excel file type. It's not yet spatial data. So data file types like that, like also like PDFs, imagery, like we talked about, drafting file types can be converted into spatial data types. And there's, unique way to do that with each different file type. Excuse me. But specifically with the Excel or CSV file type, you need to have a column in your data that has some sort of spatial reference. So a lot of times that's a latitude and longitude pair. So if you put your table into a GIS software, it can pull the latitude, longitude, and map the coordinates on the map. And then the output is a data layer that has a spatial reference and can be used in GIS. An alternative to this is if there's an address provided in the dataset. ArcGIS Pro can do what's called geocoding, which pulls from like a master database of like addresses across, at least the whole country. I'm not sure how global it goes, but and it'll pull from that to be able to map the addresses you have in your spreadsheet that you're working with. So with the TIMS, we'll do this with the lat longitude values when we go into the activity. So also in the activity, we're going to do some basic geoprocessing. So geoprocessing is a very general term that refers to a framework and set of tools for processing geographic and related data. So it's very much kind of like an umbrella term. You can think about it just as a set of tools that allow for the definition, management, and analysis of geospatial information. So there's a whole variety of geoprocessing tools that are available in GIS software like ArcGIS Pro. I'm going to overview the buffer and the clip in the following slides just to kind of show you how some basic analysis is done with GIS data using these geoprocessing tools. So a buffer is basically just creating a radius around the data that you're working with. So if you think about a point data set, this first input output here on the left, if you have a point data set, much like we do with our crash data set, that would be your input into the buffer tool in your GIS software. And your other input, your other most important input is going to be your radius length. So you set what distance you want the radius to be drawn around each of the points. So you can set it to be any number and then there's a variety of units provided like miles, meters, feet, yards. And so you can customize that as you like, and then have a radius drawn around each of your points. And then you can do that for line and polygon input as well. So you can kind of think about a use case for this. This is kind of one I just came up with off the top of my head. But if you had a point data set of fire hydrants in a city, you might be interested in showing something like a 30-foot or so radius around each of them in case of a blast leak. And then you would be able to see the impact of what would be within the radius of the water being spouted from the fire hydrant in case of a leak. So there's a whole ton of use cases for buffering, but that's just kind of one I wanted to share as an example. So yeah, that's a pretty basic geoprocessing tool that can be very, very powerful, is the buffer. Then there is what's called clipping, which is in other contexts would probably be called cropping. So it's basically if you have a large data set that covers a large area and you're only interested in a subset of it, you can upload what's called a clip coverage as a data layer, and it can be a circle, it could be whatever sort of polygon shape that gives a boundary to the area of interest that you want the larger data set to be subset to. So if you sometimes it can be cumbersome for the machine you're working on, or just visually to be looking at way more than you're interested in. So you can run a clip to kind of crop the data to just a subset of a geographic area that you're interested in, and then have an output data layer that is just exactly your input, but only for the clip coverage. So an example use case, you could think about your clip boundary being like a county. And maybe you have a fire hydrant data set that covers the entire state of California, but you're only interested in looking at those that are within Sacramento County. So then you can use your polygon for Sacramento County as your clip coverage and generate a data set that just has your fire hydrants within there. That's an example of clipping. So I just listed some other examples here of geoprocessing. So when you're converting data file types, you do that using a geoprocessing tool. So maybe if you have an Excel and you want to make it a shape file, that's an example of geoprocessing. If you want to determine distance between all points and between multiple data layers, rather than like individually measuring distance between things, you can run a geoprocessing tool that will output distances. You can combine data layers or feature files based on common attributes or locations. So if you have something like a street data set from one source and then another street data set from another source, and they have different attribute tables, and you want to just look at them together, geoprocessing can use a common attribute that would be maybe something like the street name that would be in both street data sets that you found, to combine the two data sets into one, so that you're just working with one component rather than two. And then final example I listed is you can erase features based on a location. So it's kind of the opposite of the clip, to where you would define a boundary area and then your output would be all the features from your input layer that are outside of your boundary area. So it's essentially erasing what's inside that area rather than cropping to that area, like in the case of the clip tool. So remember we talked about the orange peel analogy earlier, and that was getting us thinking a little bit about GIS projections. So again, projections are what are applied to maps to resolve the distortion that is inherent in the fact that we're representing a 3D reality in a 2D way. And there are many different kinds of projections, and they can preserve different aspects of your map depending on what you're most interested in. So there are kind of projections that will preserve the true shape of everything that you're looking at, but then it'll distort other things like the area and the distance in the stretching that needs to be done. So maybe you're looking at a world map and you want all the country boundaries to be the shape that people, commonly know them as, and what they actually are in reality. So then you'd go with what's called a conformal projection that preserves shape. Maybe you're more interested in preserving the true area of the data that you're looking at, because the analysis that you're doing has to do with area, and you want to be sure that that's being represented with 100% accuracy. You can also preserve the distance between features, and then the true direction, so like north, south, east, west. And so there's shape, area, distance, and direction, and no one projection can preserve all of these. So it's definitely an idea of trade-offs. Like what are you most interested in your map, and what can you sacrifice a little bit? So yeah, ask yourself, what's the purpose of your map? So this can help determine what projection you want to use. Alternatively, there are just some like commonly used like default projections that are what GIS users most commonly refer to. They are some of the most common ones come in sets of projections. So there's the UTM system, which divides the globe into 60 vertical regions, as you can see here in the globe in the image. And then the projection for each of those regions is optimized for what's inside that region. So if you're interested in making a map that shows land within this region here that has the state of Florida, you would use the projection that's called UTM 17. If you were interested in Portugal, you go over here, you use UTM 29. So it's a set of projections. There's one unique one for each of the 60 regions that the world has been divided into. The state plane projection system does the same thing, but just for the United States. So it's a little more customized and optimized for the US. And then the California state plane does the same thing, but just for the state of California. Steve's saying it's worth noting that for very small areas, the choice of projection is less crucial, but for large areas, this will be important to consider and understand. And yeah, that's definitely a distinction. There's a lot more distortion when you're mapping larger areas. So you have to be a lot more careful with your projections. Where when you're looking at a small area, the differences and the different distortions that manifest between different projections are more minor. So projections and other things kind of lead us to this concept of biases to be careful in map making. So as the author of a map, you have the responsibility to be clear about the distortion in what you're creating. So you have to ask yourself, is the map's projection potentially unfairly emphasizing or de-emphasizing something? Are you intentionally emphasizing something or de-emphasizing something? And in that case, you need to be clear about that. How will certain colors be interpreted by the map reader? Like for example, the color red is often taken culturally just as like a sort of a warning color. If you're choosing to represent something in the color red, is the reader potentially gonna give the implication that there's supposed to be a warning associated with this feature? Is that your intention? Do you want to perhaps choose a different color? The similar sort of issue with the fact that there are certain features that people expect to be a certain color just because of how they are in the real world, such as like bodies of water, map readers expect to be blue. Parks, they expect to be green. If you're choosing to use a different color for these things, what are you introducing a potential bias? And then what will including or not including certain features possibly imply to the map reader? So maybe you've chosen a specific study area for your map, but there's some nearby features that people might be expecting to see just because they're nearby, but you've chosen not to include them just because of the boundary area that you've set for the data that you're working with. Is it clear that you are focusing on what you're focusing on just because of the boundary area, not because of some other implication that's given to whether or not a certain feature is included or excluded? So you just kind of have to be checking yourself as you're creating a map, and are you being clear about biases that you want to be communicating to your reader, or are you potentially introducing biases that you unintentionally that you need to be careful about? So here, I just thought this was a good comparison of 3 different projections of the world map that shows just how vastly different you can show the same area given the projection that you've chosen to use. And then like in the case of A on the left here, you'd have to have a pretty specific use case to choose that projection. I think that's just not very common, and the typical reader needs to kind of be like, wait, what am I looking at here? B and C are more commonly used, but you can see there are big differences in between the areas of the world that are emphasized or larger in B compared to C. This Antarctica looks massive in B and it's barely represented in C. There's it kind of looks like there's larger continents surrounding a smaller Africa in B, where it kind of looks like Africa is the main big continent in C and it's kind of surrounded by other continents. Are there potential biases that are being introduced by choosing one over the other? So it's just a good thing to be considering as a map creator. Now we're going to go into ArcGIS Pro for Activity 2. And so I'll do the same thing I did last time, where I'll demo what you guys will be doing, and then you'll have the step-by-step instructions. And me and Steve available here for troubleshooting for any issues. Let me get over to Pro in my screen share. So let me just double check. So the first thing you need to do in Pro before you can start, doing GIS is define a project. And this is just how it works. So it'll launch, it'll be like, ask you to start a new project. And you'll have to like save it and give it a name before you're in the platform. You can start without a template, but then you'll just have to worry about it later. So it's good to just get that out of the way. So you can go ahead and select map. And then you'll want to give your project a name. Make sure it's saved in a location you're happy with. And you'll want to leave this box checked. Hit OK and create your file for you in your file management system, and then it will launch the software. And the speed of the software obviously depends on the machine that you're working with. And then mine's going to be pretty slow because I've got Zoom running, I've got PowerPoint running, I'm screen sharing. So it's going to be a little slow. So the default should open here with your map view and then this contents pane. And this contents pane is what we're going to use to add your data from TIMS to this map. So you'll right click on the map option here under contents, and there's this add data option. From here, you want to find where you saved your data. So my folder just automatically opened to the one I wanted to work with because I was doing this yesterday, but you might have to navigate around and look for where you saved your TIMS data. And then select the CSV and hit OK. You'll see it comes in as a standalone table. So this is what we talked about previously, where it's not yet a spatial data set, and we need to give it a spatial reference. So if you, no, don't double click, you want to left click to open the table. And or if you look at it in Excel, you'll see a huge number of attributes available in the data set. And you'll have to scroll, is it just all the way at the end? Yeah, for the latitude and the longitude. So that's what we're going to ask the GIS software to pull to give a spatial reference to each of these data points. So if you go to, I want to make sure I'm following exactly what the instructions say. So excuse me while I'm referencing that. But sorry, we're a little slow right now, and I got to get my Zoom bar out of the way. Bear with me just a second. Okay. So if you search for the XY table to point geoprocessing tool, it will open this dialog box. And the red asterisk fields are the ones that you are required to fill out. So your input table, it should just have the one that you've uploaded as an option. So you can go ahead and select that. It should, yeah, there, it should load the other required parameters. So the output feature class is the name of what you want the layer to be. And then the X field is the longitude and the Y field is the latitude. I'm gonna leave the default name here, but feel free to change it to whatever you'd like. The Z field is okay, blank, and then the coordinate system default is good as is. From here, you'll run the geoprocessing tool. And okay, there we go. So you can tell it finished because it populated this point data set here in my contents pane. So when I X out of the tool, let's X out of the table as well. You see here in Fresno are my lovely data points, just as we saw them in the TIMS platform. So you can click on them and see all the attribute table information. And you kind of click around and check it out, make sure it's as you expect. Zoom out and see it within the context of the broader area. Oh, I see I have a chat and a raised hand. Valerie V, how do I add the contents back to the map? I think I need a clarification on the question. Are you looking to add the table or the contents pane? Oh, I think I just understood what you're looking for. That actually is a good question. If your contents pane is gone, I'll go ahead and get rid of it. If it's under, yeah. Oh no, let's go to view. So yeah, if you go to view, you'll see contents here under Windows. And then your contents pane will pop back up. Thanks, Alexis. So once you've checked out that your data looks how it should, we're going to look at running a buffer and doing the radius around each of the data points. Another chat. Valerie, how do I add data to the map? So I just did it using the XI table to point. Well, yeah, so first you want to add the table. So right click and add data under the contents pane. And then you want to do the XY table to point with the table that you've added. So this is in the instructions, and I can reiterate this after finishing the demo. So let's see. So you want to go under view and find the geoprocessing option. And you can search, just search for buffer. And then there's another dialog box. You'll see the red required input fields. So your input feature is your XY table to point data set that you have generated. Your output feature class. So again, this is just the name of the file output that you'll be generating. So give it a name of your choice. And then I'm gonna do a radius distance of 1/2 mile. And my file search. Valid characters, maybe you're not supposed to have a period in there. Okay, forget that then. Fresno buffer. 1/2 mile, and then the default values for the non-required options are good as is. So you can do the planar method, and then no dissolve is fine. And then you'll run, and what it will do is generate a separate layer that's now a polygon layer that has a circle radius around each of the features of 1/2 mile. So again, you can kind of pan around and make sure this looks as expected. Then let me just check the document. Okay, and then there's some optional content at the bottom of the instructions. But I want to make sure you guys are good with the buffer. So I'm gonna break here. And turn the work time over to you guys. And so feel free to ask any questions at this point. Valerie, I want to make sure that you resolved your question with how to add the data to the map. Let me know if you want me to show that again.
I'm gonna
So,
go and lower her hand and
sorry, what's that, Scott?
I'm gonna go ahead and lower her hand. It's
Valerie, oh, okay, okay, I'll briefly show again. Sure, yeah, okay, I'll briefly show you again now, Valerie. Okay, so if you're starting from the contents pane, you want to do a right click on map and click add data. From here, you'll navigate to in your file system to where you saved your CSV that you downloaded from the TIMS website that we did in activity 1. So you select that. Go ahead and hit OK, but mine's already in there, so I'm going to hit cancel. So again, that was right click on map, add data, find your CSV, and hit OK. And there you should get, excuse me, a standalone table. So once you have that, go to geoprocessing, search for XY table to point. Okay, I searched for it under geoprocessing, under the view menu. You can just type it in the search menu at the top as well. It's geoprocessing, XY table point. So go ahead and put in your CSV standalone table as your input. The output feature class will generate a name automatically. You can feel free to change that. And then you want your X to be longitude and your Y to be latitude. And then you'll run that. So you'll run that up, but I'm going to go ahead and just close it because I already ran it. And that should generate your points. Okay, awesome, Valerie. Glad you got it. We just got 2 questions. My geoprocessing gets an error and no points are generated. I would want to see the error. Oh, Chantel says you're using your own data set and we use the lat long, it comes up with errors. Also use the XY point, that's totally fine, Chantel. D Castillo, sorry, I'm not sure of your first name. But would you be able to like copy paste the error into the chat, or let me know if it'd be easier to just go into a breakout room with either me or Steve and you can do a screen share.
Yeah, it might be good to do a breakout so we can do a screen share with either or both of those folks.
Would you be able to facilitate that, Scott, and put DiCastillo and Steve in a breakout? Chantel, I think I'm understanding correctly that you did get it to work, but you just used a different tool, which is totally fine. Okay, great. Stephanie, you're running into trouble. So I'm happy to field your question if Steve's gonna go with DiCastillo.
Yeah, do we have?
Okay, Steve and Chantel, I'm gonna send you to the breakout
Sounds good.
if this works.
Well, Stephanie, I see you're saying that it said it was completed, but with warnings. So you're good to go if it was completed. You just don't want there to be errors because that would stop it from being completed. Warnings are, oh, well, there's no points. Okay, well, that's a problem. Then I would want to see what the warnings are. So I don't know if it makes sense to send me into another breakout or because then there might be more questions here in the main room. for me
I
to-
agree with that.
So then do you want to just do a screen share? Here, Stephanie. And you can show me what your warnings are. I think. Yeah, I just enabled participant screen sharing if you want to go ahead and try that. So what's the difference between international and survey feet, miles, etc.? I'm actually not sure. I always default to using the survey ones. And I can't speak to what the difference is. Okay, null geometry ignored. That's a pretty common error. And I think I am seeing the points on your map behind the dialog box along the Route 99. It looks like those are the crash points.
Yeah, I don't think it matched the original map. Because,
Oh, there was more in the Tim's platform?
mhm.
Okay. Yeah, there's something with okay, I see. Yeah, there's definitely way more represented there. And it's saying that there's null geometry ignored and then there's a variety of object IDs listed there. I don't know why it would be having that issue for some of the points and not the others. Chantel's saying that's the same error.
And is this coming from Tim's data, you said?
Yes. It's from the
Okay.
map.
Interesting.
Am I able to remove it and just try and populate it into GIS?
Yeah, maybe there's one, a corrupt record that's not mapping properly.
How do I delete it from the map? Or
You can right click on it and say, tell it to remove or delete. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I see a couple other questions came into the chat. I have two. make this window bigger to see better. So then it says I'm using my agency's GIS account. It does not give me the complete menu you have there. Do I need to add for additional permissions? Which menu is that? Do you mean the geoprocessing tools or the contents pane? The geoprocessing tool. So are you able to search the geoprocessing tools? Because the buffer and the XY table to point should be in the base level of the software. Oh, Alexa's saying she had a similar problem. Oh, so there is a more basic membership.
Yeah, if you're using your agency account and you're at the lower level licensing, you won't have all the tools. That may be where, as in the pre-meeting materials, you'd want to download the trial version, which will give you a month of full access. But you'd probably have to link it to a different email address than you're using for your work account, like a personal email, because I don't think you can have two accounts with the same email.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't realize that we were at a more advanced level with the trial version. I thought it was the most basic level. So, yeah, I apologize for not issuing a warning about that. But yeah, as Steve said, you'd be able to get the free trial, more advanced version through a different email.
As an additional note, if you want to do more exploration, you can buy for, I think it's about $100 a year, a personal version of ArcGIS. It can't be used for work or any commercial purposes, but you can use it just to experiment, learn, do these kinds of things. And I believe that gives you the full set of tools as well.
Stephanie's you're saying you still ran into the same issue. That yeah, that's must be an issue with the TIMS data. So it might be that you want to generate data from a different location from TIMS and download it and try that in ArcGIS Pro. Hopefully that works. Oh yeah, as Steve mentioned in the chat, there's the backup data that I put in the Google Drive that you can download to use. Oh, Carl is asking how we do the buffer again. So yeah, more than happy to show you, but I do just want to remind there is the step-by-step instructions available in the Google Drive, but I'm more than happy to show you again. So under view, you'll find the geoprocessing option under Windows. Want to search for buffer. And then you want to input your point features. The output feature class will give you a default name for your output file, but feel free to make it whatever you'd like. Set your linear unit to really whatever you'd like, but I went with half a US survey mile for the purposes of this exercise. And then the method and the dissolve type are good with their default values. And then you can run it. I'm gonna go ahead and X out just because I already ran it, have it. But that should generate an additional layer here in your contents. That looks like this. Valerie, does ArcGIS autosave? Or do I need to save file? Could I exit out of the project without saving? It will do like an automatic backup for you, but I would recommend always consistently saving. Okay, Jessa, thanks for sending that. Okay, so Jessa's saying if you select if you're having trouble doing the XY table to point, you can select your fields to be point X and point Y rather than longitude and latitude. So that would look like this. So you search for the XY table to point, search for your tool again, put in your input table. And then instead of longitude for your X field, it has this point X. And then Y field, it has this point Y option as well. And Jessa was saying she had more success selecting those options here. So thank you, Jessa. Well, Chantel, you're doing that optional part, but you don't see the apply button. Let me just check in that file to see what you're looking at. Yeah, the apply button is not in that image. Here, let me try to show you. Yeah, thank you, Jessa. So if you're looking to alter your symbology, like in the optional instructions at the very bottom of the instructional document, it may just be that you're no longer required to apply. And you can just make the change without hitting apply. That might just be a leftover instruction from an older. Before, like, the software's been updated since then. So it seems like that worked. You can just omit that apply instruction and it'll work just fine.
Yeah, just as a bit of trivia on that, if I remember right, at the Esri user conference this summer, this was one of the new features that they added, is that they're saving steps on the on the process, and they replaced the apply button with instant updates to things
Okay,
for a number of tools.
yeah, that's more, there's an element of convenience to that in a lot of cases.
Computer people love getting rid of extra mouse clicks.
I think I've fielded all the questions that came in the chat. Feel free to remind me if I missed you, and feel free to keep them coming. We're good on time. We're good on time, so let's do another 10 minutes for this, let's say.
Ben, did you see
And
Stephanie and Valerie have got a couple of questions in the chat?
I see a couple just came in, yeah. Stephanie, so I used the range included in the activity one example, and the points are there now. Originally I used crashes in Merced, California. Can you explain why it wouldn't have worked with Merced? So yeah, there's something to do with that null geometry issue or warning that you were that was thrown when you were trying to do the XY table to point. I would need to get into the Merced County data and look at it more closely. And I'm happy to do that this afternoon and get back to you, but I think I can't take the time to dive into that data specifically right now, but I'm more than happy to do that and follow up with you after the class. Valerie, you asked, do you know how to change the image order, show certain shapes, colors over another? So if you mean between different layers, you can just click and drag in your contents pane. And so like, for example, that just put the dots under the circles in the drawing order. It's like if we made this fully opaque, which I'm looking for the transparency option. Okay, I can't find it, but that's how you do it. You click and drag in the contents pane to show certain things over others. Okay, Chantal, where is the metadata for each column heading? I'm interested in what each letter and the type of collision means. So that should be available on the Tim's website. Oh, thanks to Steve.
Yeah, I just put the link for that. I just found it while you were asked. Yeah. So that's their full metadata, or it's the data dictionary officially. It's not full metadata, but
Okay,
defines all the fields.
right. But yeah, I had the same question with the type of collision field as well, Chantal. It's just a letter, and that doesn't really have any meaning unless you get the definitions. So what would be a good way to find the proper projection for your jurisdiction? So the default one should be good for what you're doing for the purposes of this activity, but I would look at the California state plane projection system in general and see where your county or city falls within which state, California state plane you fall in, and try out that projection.
I would also recommend, depending if you're at a county level or even a city level, check with your like survey folks, if at your public works or wherever they sit in your agency. Often they will have a defined or recommended projection and coordinate grid and control points and all that. I know for us in LA County, because we have such diverse topography from, sea level to the mountain tops, as many of us in California do, we even, we have some differential projections based on where we are in the county, or if we're doing county-wide versus more regional level analysis. So because when you have more topography and more variability, that changes. And then just for fun, I'll add in, there's also, because we're in California, the earth moves a lot. We have faults and, and slippage and everything else. So there are actually subcomponents of projections called epochs that get down to the actual date of when the map data was collected, and if the ground has shifted since the collection date to the date of analysis. So, and eventually, I think in the next cycle of updates of the national control grid, which the federal government was supposed to have out this year, but they're behind schedule because of COVID, so it's a couple years out. They're going to have a new time-based projection system, which Esri will incorporate into the software. So it'll actually align those things based on, is the data old and the earth has moved due to plate tectonics and earthquakes and faults and all those other fun things. So again, if you're looking at very small areas, this is probably not an issue. But if you're looking at very large areas, countywide or larger, areas, especially if you're a large county like many are in California, this can become more important. But talk to your surveyor, your engineering folks about that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Valerie, is it possible to update or add to the data legend? For example, the collision severity is ordered by severity. I have 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to add the definition of what 2 is. So yeah, there are tools you can use to I can't remember the name of them. I don't know if you can help me, Steve. Or you're like generate a new field based on the values in another field?
Well, you can do that, or actually if you switch from your contents to your legend view on the left side of your screen. So you're in the drawing order view right now, but if you switch that to the legend view, you can actually just rename them right there in the legend on the left side of your ArcPro.
Okay.
I think it's maybe the label. I forget which one of those icons it is. I think it's the third one from the left. Maybe. Yeah. So, yeah, that one, I think. Maybe it's the label. Okay, there we go. So yeah, if you just click on, like, say, class 1, slowly, and then you can rename it right there.
Okay.
So that's an alias for what's in the data table. It won't change anything in the table, and if you have like different crash types or things like that, it would list all the types. You could name each of them separately. You can also do renaming or create a new column in the data table to do that, but that's a lot more work.
Yeah, for sure. Stephanie is asking, is symbology a newer feature? So my government license, maybe using an older version. The symbology should definitely be there. You want to share your screen again? Unable to find it. Let me double check what it says in the instructions itself. It should be there if you right click on the layer in the contents symbology here underneath convert labels above the pop-ups option. It seems like we're still working, so let's go till 11:30. And then go to the next thing. Oh, no worries, Stephanie, my eyes do that all the time. Okay, so in 1 minute, 11:30, we'll proceed. We're still a good chunk of time ahead of schedule. About half an hour. Okay. Go back into my presentation. So I have just a slide, maybe two, before we'll go into the third part of the activity, which is creating a web map. So you have some data configured in ArcGIS Pro. I mean, you likely would like to spend some more time doing some work on it, but just for the sake of, we're here only for half a day today. We're gonna put it into a finished product now, which you totally feel will be able to edit, after the course to kind of fine tune and everything if you truly want to use it. But we're just going to kind of walk through the process for how that happens as a way to wrap up the activity here. So ArcGIS Pro is the software we were just in. This connects with ArcGIS Online to allow users to publish created maps and layers that can then be configured into shareable web products. So but just a little bit of a preface for the activity we're going to do now. ArcGIS Online needs layers and background file information to follow certain requirements in order to be received, in order to receive content being published from ArcGIS Pro. So kind of like we were seeing with the geoprocessing tools we were working with in the last activity, there were going to be some warnings and errors that are going to need to be resolved. So this is, we've worked this into the activity because kind of troubleshooting and debugging is, I think it's inherent kind of just in any tech work, but certainly software work and definitely in GIS, the things are not going to work perfectly smoothly every time with all the geoprocessing tools you want to use and when you're uploading things. And so learning about how to deal with troubleshooting errors with resilience and kind of learning some tricks for handling some quick common issues is part of what we'll be doing in this next activity. So, okay, yeah, so I'll go right into the demo, then turn it back over to you guys. So let's go back to, I want to be sure I'm referencing the correct activity document. Okay, so once you have things in a way you're happy with, you want to go to this share option in the ribbon, and there's this web map button under share as. So it'll open a dialog box. And there's some information it wants you to enter. The required ones are your name. And so the name of the what you're publishing. The summary and the tags are definitely good to include, but they are optional. So feel free to write something or add a couple tags or not. So this is kind of just, it makes what you're looking for easier to be searched in the living atlas if you do choose to make it public. Or if you have a whole bunch of things that you're uploading, you can use the tags in the summary yourself to kind of reference and comb through things. But they are optional. And then the default options for the selected configuration and location are good as they are. I'm gonna end up sharing mine with everyone anyway, so I'm gonna share it with everyone from the beginning. And that'll make your final product truly public and you'll have a link you'll be able to like, you'll be able to share. Otherwise, it'll just be something that you'll be able to view. So you can kind of just select that based on your preference. So from here, before you fully share it, you want to analyze it because this will give you the errors and warnings that are going to be associated with the publication. So you can see we have a couple. To have none would be great, but I would say a little rare. It's pretty common to to get at least one error. And like we said before, the red errors are truly stopping you from moving forward. The yellow warnings are not. They're just warnings. So like this says the field type might not be fully supported in some clients. We're not going to worry about that because I know that what we're working with, it does work. So just for example, a lot of times what they've incorporated into the newest version of the software is you can just double click on the error and it'll resolve it for you. So you can right click to get what the command is. So you can see here, it's saying that the service layer has a different projection than the maps projection. So thinking about when we were looking at projections earlier, I mean, that's an issue. That means that the things aren't aligning. We need the projection to be consistent across everything you're looking at on the map. And so this is warning or throwing an error because it's like we cannot proceed because things will not be aligned when we publish it if we leave it as is currently. So what you can do to resolve that is double click it or right click it it's helpful to right click it because then you can see what it's actually doing when you double click it. So what it's going to do is update map to base maps coordinate system. So you're not going to maybe see a big difference, but you'll get your green check and that's what you want. Going down to the next red error, it's saying unique numeric IDs are not assigned. And so you need unique numeric IDs assigned to each feature. That's just something that ArcGIS Online requires in order to receive data that's being published. So here again, you can right click and it wants you to open map properties to allow assignment. So it'll open that, and at the very bottom here, there's just this box that needs to be checked that allows for the assignment of unique numeric ideas, such as what it's requesting. So then you can go, okay. Now you've got all green checks. Analyze again, just to make sure. All right, yeah, all we've got is the yellow warnings, which are fine. The red errors is what we're looking to resolve. And next we'll go to share. I just want to check out these chats to make sure I'm not.
Oh, I'm answering them as we go,
Okay,
as
cool.
much as we can.
I was like, I don't need to
But-
go back, do I?
Yeah, but I mean, maybe just to highlight for those who maybe aren't watching chat, there's questions about if you make something public, is it truly public? Yes, the whole world on the internet can see it if you make it public or they can find it. So for those using an organizational login, you can do that, but then you may want to unpublish it or make it private again as soon as we're done. Or just keep it private if you don't want it to ever be seen. You can basically share 3 levels. Keep it to yourself, keep it within your agency or organization, or make it truly public. And most government agencies will have a policy around this where maybe somebody has to check it and approve it before it goes public, through your management or your PIO or whoever it may be. But otherwise, yeah, if you make it public, it's public. And then there was a question about fake information, and yes, that's where, there's lots of data out there, especially in the Living Atlas that Ben showed at the beginning. You really need to look at the metadata and the source information and see who it is, because there's data from official agencies, like the USGS or the state or a county or city government that's published and verified as such. And then there's data from random people, students, people learning GIS, people, exploring, and they publish it. And then you may stumble on, Bob's Roads. I wouldn't use Bob's Roads with no metadata. I would go to the county or the state or the Department of Transportation authoritative data. So you definitely want to make sure you're paying attention to source data.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and I think about it, like, especially like looking through the Living Atlas as doing like a Google search. Like, you don't know that what you're finding is reliable at all. You got to kind of check what the source is and make sure it's gone through some sort of quality check. It's reliable. So you got to kind of have an eye for that while you're looking for data. Chantel's asking, how do you share each of those sharing options? So in the there are these sharing options in the initial share as a web map. So you can share it with either everyone, or you can create individual groups within ArcGIS Online. Once we're in ArcGIS Online in the browser, you'll have the full share options where you'll be able to set it to organization or everyone or personal. So I can show you that once we're in there.
Is it okay if I ask a question here, Ben, directly?
Go
So
ahead.
I have those options, everyone, my city, and then I also have groups, which one of my drop downs says city only, but I want to make sure before I click publish that I'm not publishing it so that other people can see it.
Okay, so make sure everything is unchecked then.
So everything is unchecked.
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, if you check the box, that means that person or that party will see it. So I'm sharing it so that everyone will see it. Now that I've unchecked it, only this group will see it. So if you don't want it to be public, uncheck the boxes.
And then proceeding from this point forward with nothing checked will still allow me to continue to participate in the next activities.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'm gonna uncheck just so mine's private as well, just because it kind of seems like I'm feeling like that's the preference of most of them.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a couple folks saying they're having not supported by server errors. I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from. It may be that it's trying to hit your work server if you use your work email and logged in that way. So there may be a difference in versions of what server version your in-house servers are versus the Esri servers. So again, if you go back and maybe do this later, I'd recommend maybe set up a personal account, trial account, and test it there. Or you can check with your IT folks and see if I'm not saying they're going to want to upgrade the servers right now just so you can do this exercise, but there are sometimes some version issues, and most of us in the government agencies have a habit of lagging a little bit behind on upgrades intentionally because we want to make sure we're not going to break stuff that's mission critical. And Esri does update things sometimes before we want them to. One other thing I'd note, you may have noticed on the sharing, there was the group button. So if you're working on projects within your organization, like your city or county, that you don't want to make available to the entire organization, but you just have like a team working on developing an analysis or a web map or something, you can create groups that have just a few people, pick specific people as members, and then limit it just to that subgroup, which again, for certain prototyping is important, or if you've got PII or HIPAA type data, confidential data that you don't want the whole city to see, or the whole city government to see, you can create groups and restrict it a little more granularly. So that would be that group button with the drop down if you have groups set up.
Yeah, Carl's saying is the city's just restricted your share as a web map option. So yeah, that's definitely good too. I didn't realize I didn't consider that that would be restricted by your accounts if you weren't using the free trial. So that's yeah, good to be aware of.
That error should not stop you, Chantel.
No, yeah, you could just hit OK. So I'm gonna proceed. I can circle back to help with other issues if people are still stuck at this point. But once you have your share as a web map analysis free of errors, you can hit share. Yeah, see, I got the same error. Okay. So this usually does take, a minute, but mine I think is gonna unfortunately be particularly slow because I'm on home Wi-Fi and got the Zoom running, using all my bandwidth.
So while we're waiting, Nicole had a question about sharing of map packages versus shapefiles or geodatabases. I would say, yes, that is generally a good practice. A map package includes everything, not just the individual layers, but all of the layers that are making up your map in one package that actually will open up properly within ArcPro when somebody gets it and tries to open that up. So it's packaged up your whole project for the map, not just the individual layers that you'd have in a shapefile or a geodatabase.
Okay, so we got a green message, web map shared successfully. So now you need to go to your browser and go to ArcGIS Online. Share. So go to ArcGIS Online. I often just Google it, ArcGIS Online, and then you hit the first option and you can sign in. My sign-in page looks like this because I'm associated with the university. Yours will likely look slightly more general or customized in a different way. Go to the content here. And you should see at the top a web map, a feature layer, and a service definition, all with the name of what you published from ArcGIS Pro. So you want to open this by clicking the name of the web map, not the feature layer nor the service definition of web map. Then you want to open in Map Viewer. So this will bring you to something that doesn't look entirely unlike ArcGIS Pro. It's just very stripped down and simplified. And this is called ArcGIS Online Map Viewer. So you can do a fair amount of things in here. You can change the symbology. You can do a little bit of analysis and geoprocessing. You can do some more basic things, but ArcGIS Pro is got the the full suite of capabilities. It's different levels of what it offers. I'm gonna just pretend I'm good with this map as it is and turn it into a finished product. But you guys are more than definitely feel free to configure this as you'd like. But assuming we're good with it as is, I'm gonna go to save along the left just to make sure we're all updated. And then what you want to do here is go to this create app option. Depending on your screen size, it might just be listed in the column along the left, or you might have to hit this more option. And we're going to go with just the instant app. You can customize to a pretty high level or to a pretty granular level with some of these applications. But we're going to go with the just the basic instant one. So if you hit instant apps, it'll take you to this page with a bunch of templates. So they're just kind of different ones that are more appropriate based on what you're looking to communicate. I'm going to go with just the basic one. And here it wants to give now your app a title. So I'm going to have it be the same name as my web map. You can add optional tags if you'd like. And then within your ArcGIS Online library, you can make subfolders and choose to have it in a subfolder or not. I'm going to leave it just at the default. Here you can add. So again, here, needs a second to load. So you're going to have your map with some added elements now in your final product. So they have this express toggle, which is nice because it's like, how much do you want to customize? If you want to just get to the final product quicker, you just leave the express on. It'll help you just kind of get to publishing right away. If you want to be more customized about whether like what's included in your legend and the different elements in your app, you can toggle this off and mess with those settings. And I encourage you to do so. But I'm going to go ahead with just the simple express publish option here. So then, and here's where you can double check your share settings, and you can make it public or private or whatever, and then include it in other elements. If you want to share it on social media, if you want to put it in a website, if you want to make it into an image, you can do that here. Obviously, you would want it to be shared publicly if you were going to be doing it like that, but here's where you can set between the 3 levels of owner, organization or city level, or the public. And then any subgroups that you have configured. So I'll write it back up. Yeah, it's under the share option. So I'm going to copy the link and put it in another tab. So you can see that it pulls up as like a clean web page with a map with your data represented. You can kind of scroll around and things and see that there are options here to help you zoom in and out. There's an option to take you back to your default map extent, which is just what you set it to be within the web map you were creating. You can check out the legend. You can search for an address or place, which is just a functionality that's included as a part of ArcGIS Online. And yeah, you can do the other customization things, add the title, you have the legend pop out automatically and all sorts of things. But the idea is you have like a finished web page product in your map here that's you can keep or you can share. So like you'll see, because I have it on the private settings, if I switch you guys over to see this incognito tab that I just opened, because I'm not logged into anything here, when I put the share link into this tab, it should, yeah, it's going to ask me to sign in. So I can't see the link unless I've signed into my account, which I am in my other browser. Oops, I didn't mean to X that out. But that is the idea. Okay, I think there's some questions answered in the chat while I was
Yeah, we're
talking.
having fun in chat. So there, I'll just highlight a couple things from chat. Some folks were asking about going from ArcMap to ArcPro. I put the link there too, but ArcMap, the old version, is going to deprecate. Actually, it's not until March of 2026 now. They said they pushed it out a little 6 months later, but it's being phased out. So if your organization has not made the jump to ArcGIS Pro, you may want to encourage whoever decides that to do that sooner than later, so you at least have maybe a year of overlap time to learn Pro and get it up and running and transfer workflows before suddenly ArcMap is out of support, because then you have got security risks and other things going on that we don't want in any agency. You don't want to get hit by some ransomware attack or something because you have unsupported software running on your network. So you could check out that link. I would definitely encourage that. There was some discussion. Yes, ArcPro has a new release. Maybe that has something to do with some of the errors some folks are having. It's at version 3.3, I believe now. So that's something you might check. And then on the question, Stephanie, you asked about census data. Census data is correct. You are correct. Doesn't give longs. They give census geography as the key field that you link to. So it'll be something like a census block or a block group or a tract. So what you do with census data is you pull the CSV file and you pull the geography file, the map files that go with that geography that you're looking at, tracts, block groups, or blocks. And then you have to do something called a join between the table, the CSV file table, and the census geography. That's how they connect, since they're actually tied to polygons, not to points like the accident data that we're looking at today. Now, you could save a whole bunch of work on that if you go to the Living Atlas that Ben mentioned at the beginning, the Esri Living Atlas. They have most, if not all, of the common census data already set up to work directly in ArcPro, or ArcMap for that matter. So you can actually go to the Living Atlas and grab the census data in ready-to-use format and save yourself the trouble.
I see Valerie's got a warning message. Oh, in the XY table to point, this is the null geometry ignored for 1 point. That warning, that shouldn't stop you from moving forward, Valerie. Jessa, oh, your ad blocker's keeping you out. Yeah, I don't know how to work around that without you working with your IT. Gladys, if we wanted to add new crash data, would we have to add it in ArcGIS Pro and then reshare the map? You can add, or actually, I don't know if you can add CSVs directly to ArcGIS Online.
You can.
You can.
You
Okay.
can actually do a similar process in ArcGIS Online now, where it'll take the table and map it to the points. So I'll come back to this when we're done. There are some free tool or free tutorials that Esri provides through their learning site that you could use to sort of see some of these workflows. They're, they're generic. They're not specific to any one application area. But I'll share that at the end.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Valerie says to create a final map, is it possible to do this in GIS Pro or is ArcGIS required? I'm not sure I'm clear on what you mean by GIS Pro versus ArcGIS.
I'm guessing that's ArcMap versus ArcPro,
Oh,
perhaps.
yeah, you could do
Yes.
this. You could do this in ArcMap. But like Steve said, ArcMap's being phased out and transitioning to Pro is behooves your agency. But yeah, you could do it in either one. Alexis, will there be more ArcGIS Pro courses if you mean through LTAP? We're in development stages now for future courses, so I definitely would keep a lookout on our newsletter for future things. We don't have anything in the calendar right now, but we're definitely planning on doing more courses. And then, like Steve mentioned, and I actually have linked at the end of my presentation, which is available in the Google Drive. There's a whole ton of Esri online e-learning modules that'll walk you through a whole ton of things you could be wishing to do. And there's a chunk of them that are paid and like instructor led, but then there's a whole bunch of them that are free and self-directed.
Right. And Valerie, you asked why use ArcMap to create the final map. I think, the simple answer is ArcMap or ArcPro will give you a lot more control over the design and details of what you're going to share, as far as setting up the symbology and the naming of and labeling of features and other things we didn't get into a lot of depth on today. But you can have a lot more control with the desktop software than you can in the online software. That said, everything we've done to some degree, you can do entirely in ArcGIS Online. But again, your ability to make it pretty and sort of design the details the way you might want, or to restrict the data if there's certain data you want to restrict, is more limited in the online version. So you don't have to use the desktop software like ArcPro, but for people doing sort of more serious production work, that's going to tend to be the preference.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you to the city of Clovis for participating. And this is kind of the last big chunk of the class. I want to ask for some participant feedback in a live poll in just a couple minute exercise, and then just show you some additional resources that will be available in the PowerPoint presentation in the Google Drive before we conclude. So feel free to keep sending questions about what you're working on to the chat. Like throughout the remainder of the course, and I'll be available until 12:30. But I'm gonna say in 2 minutes, I'm gonna transition to the live polling participant feedback that we want to get from you guys as participants, and appreciate if you would stick around to contribute to.
And maybe in those last 2 minutes, Ben, while you're going to do that, if I can take back the screen for just a moment, I'll show some of these other resources. Let me get the right screen here. Okay, so yeah, if you're seeing my screen now with the tutorials on there, and I'll put this link in the chat as well. So this site, which is called Esri's Learn site, you can see on the left, there's a whole bunch of filters. And what I would say is, like today, we're talking about ArcGIS Pro. So you can pick that and filter, and then you can actually choose different sort of topics. So you might look at state and local government or transportation, and it'll filter down tutorials for particular things that might be of interest or might not. I mean, it depends what you're trying to do, and you have to sort of poke around, and see what the tutorials are. So these are, you can see there's not a ton, but there's several for transportation. There's a bunch for state and local government as well. And you can kind of look at these, and these are step-by-step instructions. They give you, the details of how to go through it, and you can run these with the free sample account, or if you have an account through your agency. The other thing that we just here at the end was the ArcGIS Online. So, there's a whole bunch of others here too, but if you go to ArcGIS Online and look at things, you'll see things like, how can you create surveys to get community input? How can you do different kinds of analysis or build base maps or build web applications and so on? So a lot of these are, again, they're self-guided tutorials. The ones in this particular website with the learn in the beginning of the URL are all free. There are a whole bunch of other ones that Ben mentioned that are paid, either self-guided or instructor-led. But I think this is a good resource to be aware of, because you can use these with a free account and sort of at your leisure, at your own pace. So, and you can also filter by, different sorts of categories and so on and so forth, different levels if you want to start with beginner or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to share that real quick while we had a moment.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. Just a couple questions in the chat, then I'm going to go to the feedback. Chantel's asking, why would the 0.5 mile buffer be a useful data point? And so, yeah, I didn't really have like a specific use case in mind when I came up with the 0.5 mile buffer around crash data, but I was kind of just ruminating on it a little bit, and it could be useful to see if you're interested in seeing that there's like nearby, how many like intersections are nearby a place where there's a lot of crashes, whether there's like schools nearby or certain areas of interest when you're looking at crashes, and you want to know whether or not there are certain other features that you could compare from a different data layer that are within that buffer region that you're looking at.
And to Carl's question about can you change the buffer without creating new buffers? I'd say yes and no. There are buffer options where you can create ring buffers at varied distance. So you could do like half a mile, a mile and a half, 2 miles, and it would set them all up at once as ring buffers. There's also, I showed it sort of very quickly in passing when I was doing my presentation with the Y-Finder tool, where there's a widget you can put into your web map when you publish it onto the web that lets the user set the buffer distance, and then it'll run it on the fly. So they could set the buffer distance in the website version of your map and set it to any distance they want. And yeah, Chantel, if you turned off your buffer layer before it was published, then it wouldn't be published with the map. You could add it to the map, and then you'd have to republish it.
And you can overwrite what you published before, so it updates that.
Yeah.
Instead of having to create a new one.
And there was an earlier question about, would you have to add new crash data by creating and reshowing the map? Again, I'd say the simple answer is yes, but the complex answer is no. There are ways that you can make what's called a map service. If you have GIS people in your organization, that they would know about this. You can actually set up essentially live feeds so that the service is feeding the map instead of a static layer, and then it can dynamically update as new data comes in, and that's very common. We might have things that are updated weekly or quarterly or hourly, depending on the context, and those map services are just dynamically feeding the website map that you've published.
Right, Carl, just to respond to what you last said, yeah, the buffer distance wouldn't be a matter of symbology. You can change the symbology size to get to represent a bigger point for what you're looking at, but the buffer is a different polygon layer. So it's not part of the symbology of the original. Yeah. So I am gonna ask for you to switch your attention to get the live polling feedback, and then I'll switch back to answering questions in the chat. But I just want to be sure to gather this before we get too close to the end of time and everybody starts signing off. Really grateful for your participation today and in development in planning development of future courses. It's really helpful to get your feedback on how you felt the day went. So this is Mentimeter. You may or may not have used it before. It's a live polling tool. All you have to do is go to menti.com in your browser on your phone or on your computer, and it'll ask for a code. You can put in this one that's listed here at the top of the screen, and you should be able to answer this first question. It looks like somebody got in. I'm gonna give like a minute for the responses to come in. I'll look for there to be close to 20. Looks like there's 23 participants still on. And it'll just be 5 questions. Again, it's menti.com, a new tab in your browser. And this number here, which I guess there's a participation link I can copy. I'll put that in the chat, or I sent that to Jessa directly. Sorry, Jessa. There it is for everybody. Seems like there are a few people who still haven't answered. Let me know if you're having trouble getting into this. I'll wait till we get to, well, I'll just give it another minute. Okay, next question. Did you find the course topics to be relevant to the work that you do or would like to do? You could say they were all relevant, most of them were relevant, some of them were relevant, or none of them were relevant. Next question, would you recommend this course to a coworker interested in ArcGIS Pro? Yes, maybe, no. Oh, Valerie's. That's the correct place, Valerie. It should launch the presentation because I've started it. I don't know if yours is a little behind.
it's possible you got the wrong code in there if you mistranspose a number.
Yeah,
So maybe double check, like go back up to the login and try the code again.
or try the link I sent in the chat. Oops. What additional topics or skills that weren't covered would you have been interested in learning about? Feel free to just type NA if you don't have anything, but if you have a few words about something you wish would have been covered, that would be helpful to hear. And this is the second to last question. There's one more multiple choice after this. This is the only written one. I'll give another extra minute to this one because it's written response.
Some good ideas there for you, Ben.
Yeah, this is really helpful. Um, My final question, would you be willing to participate in a follow-up interview about your experience today? Oh, Valerie, so you let me know you were unable to answer the previous question. That's okay. Thank you for letting me know. And yeah, huge thank you to you, Steve, for your help today. You added a lot of value with your insight and experience.
It's my pleasure. I love to do this sort of stuff. I'm going to make one other little pitch on the side too, just for fun. I'm very active in an organization called ERISA, which is the Urban and Regional Information Systems Association. It's a professional association for GIS people in government primarily. If you're if you or your agency's looking for more opportunities, we through ERISA teach GIS leaderships academies and program management workshops and a variety of technical trainings as well. They're not this kind of workshops. They're more for people that are GIS specific. But if you're interested in learning more about, how your county, city, agency can get involved with or get your people connected, please feel free to reach out on that too. I'll put that in the chat. It's ERISA. Just Google it, you'll find it. We have a national conference every year. This year it's in October in Portland, Maine. It's probably a little late to get travel there. There's also a state of California chapter called California ERISA. They usually do a state conference as well. And then there's a state chapter that does workshops and things throughout this and gatherings throughout the state. It's not free. It's a membership organization, but it's not super expensive to join for agencies that like I know a number of counties and cities are members. We are in LA. Sorry, it's not free. But anyway, check it out. Some events are free to attend. So some of the webinars and things.
Great, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
And Stephanie, Steve just sent his email to the chat. I'll send mine to the chat right now as well. It's also in the slide deck, and that'll be in the Google Drive. That will remain open to you all. And just want to show you one last thing. The final slide in the presentation links to the Google Drive and also to the Esri online training, the link to which Steve sent in the chat as well. One recommendation I also threw in there is if you're having a specific problem, Google is honestly, I mean, it's kind of a duh answer, but it's a great resource in that there's likely a ton of other people that had the same issue you're having and might have made a YouTube video about it, or there might be a whole Q&A forum already with your answer to what you're looking to do already just readily available for you. And then there are look for future classes from CALTAP as well. Yeah, thank you to everybody for your participation and hope you have a good rest of your day.